So, we had a solid episode of Raw this week, but the real standout stars of the night, to me, was the pairing of Alexa Bliss and Bray Wyatt. There was no actual physical appearance by The Fiend on this episode, but his presence was definitely still felt throughout the show. Raw opened up with Randy Orton declaring himself as one of the all-time greats, and calling out anyone to try to take the title from him. Alexa Bliss was the one who answers Randy Orton, and she marches her way to the ring. One thing to notice is that Alexa's new theme song was gone. She was back to her usual old theme song. So at the time of this recording, no one knows why that's the case. Is it a character-related matter, and she only uses the remix when she's in her alternate persona? Or was there an issue with the song? We just don't know. We heard a few seconds of the new theme in Raw from a few weeks ago, and it was sounding perfect. It was the same theme song, but with a dark twist to the sound, and it also featured some vocals from Alexa, but for whatever reason, she was back to her old song this week. Alexa enters the ring, holds up the pain glove under her chin, and warns Orton that The Fiend could be here. Orton freaks out, waiting for The Fiend, which leads to Drew McIntyre attacking Randy Orton. And it also led to The Miz nearly cashing in the Money in the Bank contract. However, McIntyre stops The Miz from cashing in and says that he will be the only one to take the title away from Orton. So, it was a great opening segment to reinforce to us the three main threats that Randy Orton is dealing with, not to mention that Roman Reigns will also be coming to town soon. But then, we get to the Firefly Funhouse episode with Bray and Alexa. The quality of the Firefly Funhouse episodes have really been outstanding ever since the addition of Alexa Bliss to the show. In this episode, Bray and Alexa have a swear jar since swearing isn't allowed in the Funhouse. But Abby the Witch doesn't seem to care. Abby said some very over-the-top things about Randy Orton and to Alexa Bliss. So we have never heard the puppets feel so passionately about something and swear at superstars like this. So what was that all about? It's hard to tell, but considering Abby the Witch seems to have a connection to the original Sister Abigail character, that's probably why she strongly dislikes Randy Orton. Remember back in that 2017 feud when Randy Orton burned the house down? It wasn't really confirmed, but it was still implied that Sister Abigail could have been inside the house during that time of Randy's attack. So maybe that's why the puppets have zero respect for Randy Orton, to the point that they're literally cursing him out. Bray Wyatt provides the backstory about the burning of the house and explains how the past is in the past, but that he never forgets. Alexa Bliss then shows off a new trick that she's been working on. By using Bray's heel glove, Alexa's tongue, or this weird red object, continued to grow, and that's how the episode ended. But thankfully, it wasn't over there. WWE followed that up with another very intriguing backstage segment with Alexa Bliss. We see Nikki Cross walking backstage, and she happens to stumble upon Alexa Bliss. But Alexa, being the way that she is right now, wasn't just hanging out backstage on her phone or something like that. She was facing the wall, and all we saw was Alexa's back while Nikki Cross talked to her. Nikki Cross has been trying to reach out to Alexa Bliss and talk some sense into her for a few months now, but Nikki is never successful when she tries to save Alexa Bliss. And like we talked about before, Nikki Cross hasn't learned her lesson. Alexa is too far gone already, but Nikki isn't giving up and still insists on trying to save her former best friend. We heard Nikki say how she's been trying to call and text Alexa, but she has gotten nothing in return from Alexa. Alexa has her back turned towards Nikki Cross for the entire duration of this one-sided conversation. But eventually, Nikki grabs Alexa to get her to turn around, but Nikki instantly gets spooked by Alexa's appearance. Alexa turns around with yet another new look that had just such a strong feeling of darkness. She had on those same contacts that we've seen her wear for brief moments in the Firefly Funhouse, and the makeup around her eyes was solid black. Alexa Bliss has always been top tier when it comes to facial expressions. So Alexa turns around to face Nikki and gives us this evil look that literally makes Nikki Cross run off. This goes to show you Alexa's talent. She didn't have to say a single word in that entire moment with Nikki Cross, but I feel like her facial expressions told the entire story and spoke volumes. So initial thoughts and theories from this moment right here, I think we're definitely going to see Nikki Cross turn to this dark side thanks to Alexa Bliss. Nikki Cross is really playing with fire here by continuing to interact with Alexa Bliss, and I think she's going to pay the price for all these interactions with her eventually. The funniest part about all of this is that NXT Nikki Cross was nearly as dark as Alexa Bliss. The Nikki Cross we see today is a whole completely different person compared to the character we saw her play in NXT. NXT Nikki Cross had such a dark and twisted personality. That would have blended in perfectly with Bray Wyatt. However, thanks to Alexa Bliss and her main roster experience, Nikki Cross was able to break out of her shell and really change up her personality. So how ironic would it be if the person who broke Nikki out of her shell actually ended up being the person to revert Nikki Cross back to her old dark and twisted personality from NXT? Maybe that's what the smile from Alexa Bliss was all about during her backstage moment with Nikki Cross. Maybe Alexa is thinking, I can break her. I can get her to join us. That's what's running through her head when she looks at Nikki Cross, and I would love to see that happen. Sure, Bray Wyatt is targeting Randy Orton right now, but maybe Alexa Bliss is getting her own separate storyline here as well, which will showcase Alexa targeting Nikki Cross and getting her to join the family. That makes a lot of sense. It's also interesting to wonder what exactly was Alexa Bliss doing backstage in that moment that Nikki Cross found her. There was no Bray Wyatt or The Fiend in sight, so what exactly was she doing all by herself? It reminds me of those theories we talked about when Alexa was first having these trances on Smackdown. Alexa would get into these trances and go walking backstage, and we discussed how it would be interesting for Nikki to just follow Alexa to see where she goes and what she does backstage. Well, I feel like we got a version of that with this backstage moment. Maybe that's exactly what Alexa Bliss was doing backstage on Smackdown when she used to enter her trances. But either way, I'm loving what we're getting right now from Alexa Bliss. Alexa Bliss hasn't wrestled in weeks, but that doesn't even matter because her character and storyline is so rich that she doesn't even have to compete in order to have a big role in the show. Never thought I'll say this, but it feels like Alexa Bliss is surpassing Bray Wyatt in terms of being a more interesting character right now. I really can't believe I'm saying that. Someone has a more rich character than Bray Wyatt, but that's how I'm starting to feel with Alexa Bliss. There's just so much going on with her character right now. Her character is so complex and has so much different layers that she'll slowly become more interesting than her mentor, Bray Wyatt. We saw a laughing and giddy version of Alexa Bliss during her Moment of Bliss with Randy Orton, but then we saw this super dark, fiend-like version of Alexa Bliss during that moment with Nikki Cross. The character just has so many sides to her right now. Nikki responded to the interaction with Alexa on Twitter, saying, I don't even know what to do from here, guys. Solid advice to run, but she was my best friend. She still is. But I never tried to skirt away from the fact that this is my fault. I did this. I wish you would all understand the guilt I'm still feeling, but what do you want me to do? Move on? Help? Leave? Run? It looks like Nikki is going to mess around and find herself just as lost as Alexa is right now. But that's where I'm at here. I love what Bray Wyatt has done and everything he stands for, but I'm just so intrigued by Alexa Bliss's character right now that I do have to give her the slight edge over him. But what are your thoughts on everything going on with Alexa Bliss? Leave your comments, don't forget to subscribe, and leave a like if you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, guys.